You've been quoted to be an opponent of the bank bailouts that happened last year.
Now there's a quote that actually is true. That's absolutely true. And I am. And it's one of the big issues I started the campaign on. Because when we started the campaign, the bank bailout was a big, huge issue. And my point was the Republican platform says we don't believe in bailing out private business. It also says we don't believe in government ownership of business. And yet half of our Republicans voted for the bank bailout. It was one of the things I came out to support Senator Bunning on and say, look, here's one of the good guys who voted against the bank bailout. Y'all need to lay off of him, because everybody was pressuring him to leave the race at that time. Now he eventually decided to retire, but I think he's been a good voice, critical of the Fed when they've been wrong, and also critical of the bank bailout. And a lot of Republicans didn't have that courage. And so I think it is a big issue. And I tell people we're in a primary. This is about choosing who the next wave of Republican leadership is going to be. So do you want someone who's hardcore and has always spoken out against the bank bailout, or those of the politicians now, even President Obama says it was a mistake. Now, oh, everybody hates the bank bailout. Ask him why he voted for it. And there will be people in our primary. Most of the others will come on board now. But it's something I've been saying for years, ever since it happened, whereas now people realize the Tea Party's motivated by it, and so there's a lot of Johnny-come-latelys to the issue.
Well, I mean, Mitch McConnell was Senate Minority Leader from Kentucky, who was the other senator who voted for it. Will you keep that enthusiasm if you do get this seat and still speak out against your own party?
Well, it's not against the party. What I would say, I will speak out for the platform, because the platform says we don't believe in bank bailouts. There will be other individuals from the Republican Party who will vote the other way, but I think Kentucky wants 2 senators, not 1. And when I agree with Senator McConnell, I will work very hard to support what he supports. And if we have a disagreement, we'll do it in a gentlemanly fashion. I've been very complimentary of him on some issues. For example, he has been a big leader against McCain-Feingold, which is a clear infringement of the First Amendment. And just last week, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 to overturn large parts of McCain-Feingold, and I called up his office to compliment him. Now, he isn't helping me in the primary, he's helping my opponent in the primary, but at the same time, what I want is unification. You ask me, will I support the candidate who wins? I think Senator McConnell will support me, and I've told him I will be a good team player on many, many issues, but I've told him things like term limits I will continue to promote and talk about. And I think he understands that. I think he understands very well that there will be issues we agree on and some we disagree on. But I would say maybe the vast majority Republicans will agree on. I mean, he's been a good and effective minority leader at opposing a lot of what Obama's done.
One last question. There is a growing illegal population in Kentucky. What would you do to address this issue?
I think it's absolutely in our interest as a nation and for national security to control our borders, and we absolutely must do so. I would, if I were in charge, and this would actually be being president, which I'm not running for, but if I were, I would set up in 3 months, I would have a secure border. I'd do it either through an electronic fence or a wireless fence. I'd have 4 or 5 helicopter stations, and I would have no one come in the country illegally. And I would stop it. I think we can also address legally through the court system whether or not parents who come here illegally and have children, whether they should be citizens. We've been doing that for a long time, but there is some question with the 14th Amendment whether or not those people are under, the 14th Amendment says they must be under the jurisdiction of this country. And are they automatically just because they got here, or are they still under the jurisdiction of the Mexican government? And so I would challenge that in court, and I would support the same way Senator McConnell has supported through the courts overturning McCain-Feingold. I would support legal challenges to say, are you a citizen just by breaking the law and coming here? And I think you should not be, because we just have a flood of people breaking the law, and then we reward them with the welfare system here, and I think that's a mistake.
I said one last question, but you said if you were president right now, if you were,
right,
what would be your one precedent crisis of all the ones that America faces right now?
The debt. No question. The debt is overwhelming us. The debt threatens, I think, our very society, and there are countries that have destroyed their currency. In 1923, Germany destroyed its currency because they just kept printing up so much money to pay for government expenditures. There is a danger that can happen. Even in the world's greatest, most dominant country, America, we could destroy our currency And if we do not do something about the debt, that is my biggest fear, is that we could have a disaster on our hands in our country.
Where do jobs fall in that priority?
Jobs are part of that, because I think what happens is when government's spending all this money, they're taking money out of the private system. But I don't think government creates jobs, private individuals create jobs, but there's more money in the private system if you leave it there. So my thing about jobs is I don't want to take it to Washington and give you some back to create a federal job. I want to leave the money in Kentucky so entrepreneurs, businessmen, and women can create jobs.
Is there one thing that you can promise Kentuckians that you will do to help create jobs in Kentucky?
I can promise you that I will absolutely not trade or sell my vote, that I will be true to what I've run on, that I will introduce term limits as the first thing that I introduce in Washington, that I will introduce a rule and/or amendment to balance the budget by law, and that I will fight and stand up for those issues, because I think limited government, balanced budgets would send a huge signal to Wall Street and to business in America that we're no longer bankrupting the country. I think you'd have an amazing psychological surge just by having a government that lived within its means.
I appreciate it, Rand. I
Thank
really
you. Thanks
appreciate
for
you
having
sitting
me.
down with me. I am Mica Sims. I write for MicaSims.com, and it's Rand Paul 2010.